Hi. Yeah, now we're in. Okay, I'm just gonna move that away. Hello, beautiful justice lovers on a sunny spring evening. Welcome to the 13th Flights and Rights. Thank you so much for being here with us. My name is Michelle Storms, and Deputy Director at the ACLU of Washington. We are always so happy to see you all here, and can't believe we've been going strong now for a little bit more than a year, so thank you very much for being here. I also have to tell you something kind of exciting. Last week I was in Spokane and we had our first ever Flights and Rights outside Seattle. We did it in Spokane. It was amazing. We talked about the intersection between immigration and policing, which is an issue that is hot everywhere these days under this current presidential administration and even before that, but it's really hot in Spokane where all kinds of problematic things are happening with Customs and Border Patrol boarding Greyhound buses and police holding people who they've identified as potentially illegal immigrants, namely brown-skinned people they perceive to be Latinos. So there's a lot of stuff going on over there, and the community, the progressive community there, has really been rallying behind this work and supporting the communities, the immigrant communities, and it was a total delight to be there with them. So I just wanted you to know that we're starting to take this on the road, it's going strong, and you are just a part of a large network of people who really care about democracy for everyone. So thank you for being here and doing your part, and just want you to know we're in this together. There's a lot of us, okay? So hand for that. Okay, so I have a couple things I always have to do, like, is it your first time here tonight? Please raise your hand if so. Yay, welcome first timers. Super glad to have you. And those of you who've been here before, which is most of you, welcome back. That's just really fantastic. So we're so grateful to KEXP for once again housing us, so please a hand for KEXP. And I already tweeted to DJ Michelle to let her know we feel that she's not here, but we love her dearly when she's here. And we're also grateful to Fremont Brewery. So thanks, everybody. And as always, if you're inclined to connect on social media, the hashtag is ACLU Flights. And also, as usual, we are live streaming the presentation on Facebook. So if you have friends who are bummed out because they have the spring crud and they couldn't leave the house, tell them they can log onto the ACLU Facebook page and watch. So no excuses. Okay, also as usual, if you didn't fill out a card for a raffle prize, please do that, because as usual there will be two prizes, a wonderful DeSantis patriotic tote and something nice inside of that. She told me, but I forgot. And and also, as usual, have to make my plug. I want you all to be members of the ACLU. I'll just be straight with you about that. I want you all to be members. Are you a member? Who's a member? Yes! Okay, so that's most people. Think about doing it because it really gives us additional power and strength when we're before the legislature, which you're going to hear a lot more about shortly, or other places we go to let people know that progressive, democratic, patriotic values actually do rule, and you help us to make that point by participating with us. So thank you for that. Let's see, what else? Oh, so since the current president was elected, we've taken nationwide 139 legal actions against him and his hateful agenda, and beating him, yes, beating him on the Muslim ban, beating the administration on abortion rights, immigration rights, discrimination, and again. And obviously we're gonna have to keep doing it, and we are gonna keep doing it. So it's not easy, it's not going away, but we are not stopping, and stay with us, because we are on it, okay? Thank you. No, I heard a clap, go for it. And also, I guess, speaking of this membership thing, looks like we have 80,000 Washingtonians on our side. So those of you who aren't members yet, don't you want to be in that 80,000 number? Okay, so that's available to you. So last November, we had a Flights and Rights where we talked about the upcoming state legislative session, because there's a lot of issues, as a state affiliate, We do a lot of work in our state to preserve civil rights and civil liberties for the people who live in Washington state, whether they were born in this country or not, regardless of their gender identity, regardless of who they are, that's who we're protecting. So in November, our legislative director came and told you some of the things that she was expecting we might see in the legislature for 2018. So today she's going to tell you what did happen. So we're going to find out that, because lawmakers propose some things that are good, some things that are bad, but we're in there trying to fight it. So we're on the other side of the legislative session now, which was amazingly completed on time, which I don't think has happened for many years. She'll tell you more about that. And so we're going to talk to you about what happened, and we're also going to continue to talk to you about how you can stay engaged both during session and not during session to make sure that we are having lawmakers in place who uphold our values and are being held accountable for continuing to uphold those values. So that being said, I am excited to reintroduce to you our Legislative Director, Elisabeth Smith, who is awesome. So clap before I even tell you about her, because she's just that great. So she has been with us as the legislative director. It doesn't say here in my notes how long she's been with us, but it's been a couple of years. And before that, she was a staff attorney at the Northwest Health Law Advocates. She's a graduate of the University of Washington School of Law. I see some UW Law students and grads here. You want to give a shout if you're a UW Law student or grad? You're not the only one. Yeah, I see some in the back. Thank you for coming. And she served as the editor-in-chief of the Pacific Rim Law and Policy Journal. And before law school, she worked at two art nonprofits, the Terra Foundation for American Art and the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures. She has a Master of Arts in the Humanities at the University of Chicago, Bachelor of Arts from Davidson College in North Carolina, graduated Phi Beta Kappa. We're very fortunate that she's here doing this work for us, because really she is a force to contend with in Olympia and makes so many good things happen for all of us. She's holding people's feet to the fire on issues of justice and equity. So please join me in welcoming Elisabeth Smith.
Thank you. And as my PowerPoint comes up, I also want to say thank you to my dad, because in November when I spoke to hopefully some of you, I had to advance the PowerPoint on the laptop, and my father watched the live stream and then called me and said, "Do you guys not have a clicker? I'm going to buy you a clicker." So he sent me this from Amazon. It arrived 2 days after my presentation. So thank you all for being here. As Michelle said, I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened during session, which just ended last month, and then talk about the elections that are coming up in 2018. So this is, as I said, what I'll be talking about tonight. Hang on 1 second. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start with some questions. I did this in November. I want to see how many people know. How many legislators are there in the state legislature? Come on, don't be shy. How many? How many legislative districts are there in Washington state? I'm seeing some people mouth. You're getting close. So there are 3 legislators per district. So if you know the number of districts, you'll know the number of legislators. So there are 49 legislative districts in Washington. So that means we have 147 legislators. We have a bicameral citizen legislature. The members of the Senate are elected for 4-year terms, and members of the House of Representatives are elected for 2-year terms. So my next question is, what legislative district are you in?
46.
Nice, I love this participation. For those of you who don't know what legislative district you're in, the legislature's website, leg.wa.gov, will actually tell you. So there's this webpage, you put in your address, and we'll use me. So I live in Ballard. So I would put in my address here, and I would find out that I am in the 36th legislative district, and these are my 2 representatives and my state senator. So for those people who don't know, it'll take you 2 minutes. Go home tonight, go to this webpage, find out who your representatives are. So I talked in November about how to engage with the legislature, and my points are still the same, but they're a little bit different in an election season when the legislature is not in session. So the first thing is vote, right? We have lots of elections coming up. In addition to voting, there will be lots of events this spring and summer. So you can attend in-district events, public meetings and town halls, which all legislators who are running to keep their seats will have, as well as candidates who are challenging them. In addition, you can make phone calls, you can write letters, you can send comments in online to all of your legislators and probably to candidates as well. And the other plug I'll make is if you go to ACLU-WA.org, you can sign up for our action alerts. So even when the legislature is not in session, we still send action alerts about things happening locally, about other events. So sign up and you'll get more information from us. So Michelle said that this session got out on time. So what does she mean? Washington State has a biennium. So we have a 2-year session, a long session and a short session. And in odd numbered years, which is the budget year, the legislature is supposed to meet for 105 days. In an even numbered year, it's the short session, where they're supposed to meet for 60 days. So this was the short session, and this was the first time in about 6 years that the legislature has actually adjourned, sine die, after only 60 days. So last session, when we were supposed to be there for 105 days, or 2017, the legislature didn't adjourn until July the 20th. So how did that happen? In addition to the regular sessions, either short or long, the governor can call special sessions, which can last up to 30 days. So last year, we should have gotten out in April, but we had subsequent special sessions that lasted until July. And in addition to the governor, just for those who are keeping track of legislative abilities, the legislature itself can call special sessions with a 2/3 vote. Okay, so who am I? For a lot of people, the word lobbyist is a dirty, dirty word. It means someone, like smoking behind closed doors, taking legislators out to expensive steak dinners. I don't eat meat, nor do I smoke, so that's not happening. But in addition, as you can all imagine, your legislators are not specialists. They're not experts on every single issue that comes in front of them. So they really depend on people who are experts, talking to them about various issues, helping them work on bills, helping them draft amendments, and helping them move a bill through the process. So that's essentially what I do. On our website, I think it says that my job is to lead the ACLU Washington's work to protect and advance civil liberties in the Washington legislature and to advocate for the ACLU's interests, which are yours, to lawmakers, government agencies, and stakeholders throughout the state. So essentially, I am the ACLU's public face in Olympia. I'm the person who testifies on bills, who meets with legislators, who advocates for bills that we proactively work, and then opposes bills that we think would have a detrimental effect on your civil rights or your civil liberties. Okay, so how many bills are we talking about? So in this biennium, 1,410 bills were introduced. Remember, there are only 147 legislators, so you can see that each one is doing multiple bills. Some do a few, some do lots. And 308 bills, and excuse me, that first number is just this year. 1,410 bills were introduced in 2018, and 308 of them passed. So there you see below how many bills were introduced in this biennium and how many bills passed. So when I look at this number, I want to know whether that's above average, below average, where that fits. So the 10-year average for the number of bills passed in a short session, the even year session, is 287. So the legislature passed more bills in a short session that stuck to 60 days than they have, averaged out over the last 10 years. So how many bills do we track? So we review and at minimum, monitor all bills that are introduced that would affect civil liberties or civil rights. We have, some special focuses: ending mass incarceration, technology and liberty, but we review all the bills that touch civil liberties. So in this year, the ACLU reviewed, monitored, and acted upon 840 bills, which is about 25% of all of the bills that were introduced this biennium. So I want to give a special shout out at this point to a very, very important person who was the legislative assistant basically during this session, and so tracked every single one of these bills, put them all into a spreadsheet, and kept all of us honest. So Erica, I want you to just give a wave. She's the person who I called in desperation so many times, just saying like, I need this information in 5 minutes, please give it to me. And she did it every time, so thank you. Okay, so looking at our legislative priorities, who was here in November to hear me talk about the upcoming session? Oh, thank you for coming back. I'm glad to tell you what happened after telling you what could have happened. So the first thing I'll say, the legal financial obligation reform. The ACLU has worked on this bill for multiple years, along with a whole variety of other stakeholders and partners. Probably most importantly, formerly incarcerated folks who've actually dealt with legal financial obligations themselves. So I'm going to remind everybody who was here in November or last summer when one of my colleagues talked about LFOs, what they are. So they're the fines, the fees, the costs, and restitution that are imposed by courts on top of all criminal convictions in the state. Prior to this bill, both restitution and non-restitution LFOs had a 12% interest rate. 12%, right? That's huge. Up until the bill passed, the system did not, the criminal justice system did not, in a standard way, take into account a person's ability to pay legal financial obligations, which, as you can all imagine, resulted in an unfair burden on people of low income or limited means. Some courts across the state of Washington, in addition to not taking people's ability to pay into effect, also, when people paid their LFOs, would actually allocate that payment to the cost of collection before allocating payments to the LFO debt itself. So you can imagine, if you have a 12% interest rate, you don't have the ability to pay, and that debt keeps growing and growing, you make small payments, and it just goes to the cost of collection and not actually to the principal or even the interest. So, what does House Bill 1783, which is now law and will become effective on June 7th, do? It prohibits the collection of all fines and fees until restitution is paid. It sets clear standards for determining whether a defendant has the ability to pay. It eliminates interest on non-restitution LFOs. It stops the accrual of interest during incarceration. So up until now, that 12% interest rate would run the whole time someone was incarcerated. And it also will prohibit collections from someone's need-based public assistance. So now imagine, yeah, thank you. So this bill is now law, and it is our hope, we are working through the implementation process right now, and it's our hope that judges, defense attorneys, people involved in the criminal justice system across the state will have a robust implementation process, and we will actually have a criminal justice system that is more fair and allows people who are convicted of crimes to serve any time that is imposed and move past their convictions and become members of our communities again. So that was a major win, passing LFO reform. The next bill I want to talk about has been a priority for the ACLU for many, many years, repealing the death penalty. So lots of people, thank you again, lots of people don't actually know that Washington has a death penalty. We do. There's currently a moratorium in place, but prosecutors across the state could still seek the death penalty in an aggravated murder trial. So there are lots and lots of reasons to repeal the death penalty. I'm just going to hit on a couple of them, but I'm sure you could each come up with additional reasons. So, the death penalty is very costly. It fails to provide swift and certain justice or deter crime, and it's not applied fairly. So because of the risk of executing an innocent person, the courts and state law rightly require extensive safeguards that are costly, as you can imagine. Seattle University professors did a report in 2015 where they found that death penalty prosecutions cost at least $1 million more than other murder prosecutions where the death penalty is not sought. So at minimum, $1 million more coming out of county budgets. At maximum, there are death penalty prosecutions that have cost and this is just the trial court level, have cost $14 million, have cost $16 million. I think we can all think of things that any county in the state could spend millions of dollars on instead of a death penalty prosecution. Getting to that point, in Washington, the death penalty is applied unevenly. There are 8 people currently on death row. 4 of those men are African American. African Americans make up 6% of our state population. So how come half the people on death row are African American? In addition to that, because of the cost of the death penalty, there are lots of counties in Washington that simply don't have the budget to absorb a death penalty prosecution. So again, if the highest punishment in Washington's criminal code is the death penalty, it is absolutely inappropriate, and that's it's not a strong enough word, but it's absolutely inappropriate for someone to commit a crime in one county and someone else to commit a similar crime in a different county and have the two of them face different punishments. And beyond all of that, science has shown us that the death penalty is not a deterrent. People who commit murder doing so without considering the consequences or thinking that they will escape any of those consequences. So, in our view, rather than trying to fix this system, what the legislature should do, and we believe it should be the legislature because they have the responsibility, that they should just repeal the death penalty. Really excitingly, this bill is not yet law, but really excitingly, this year, it actually passed the Senate. And it passed the House Policy Committee. And it got really, really close to passing the House. And lots of people have asked me, why didn't it pass? Whose vote did you need? What happened? And the reality is, going back to the 60-day session, we ran out of time. We ran out of time to enact the bill, but we got people on the record. We have people who voted for it, and we got farther than this effort has ever gotten before. So I hope that next year, at the end of the 2019 session, I can come back or send you an email and say, we have repealed the death penalty. But you're going to hear me talk more about voting later. This is a question that people need to hear from their constituents on, right? So once you know what district you're in, and you know who your representatives are and your senator, go to one of their town halls and say, do you support repealing the death penalty? And see what they say. So, and the third bill I'll talk about here is driving while license suspended in the 3rd degree. Who has heard of this crime? I'm glad to see that. Driving while license suspended, or DWLS 3, is the most widely charged crime in the state of Washington. It's a misdemeanor. How do you get it? So you or I are driving, and we are pulled over and we're given a moving violation, and we don't pay it. After that one unpaid moving violation, our license will be suspended. And if you keep driving, and I think lots of people do, right? There are lots of reasons why you need to drive your car, especially if you're not in Seattle, or even if you are, and there's not good public transportation. So you keep driving. You get pulled over a subsequent time. And now, the law enforcement officer who pulls you over sees that your license has been suspended. So, you are now liable for DWLS 3. What's the difference between people who get a ticket and pay it, and people who get a ticket and don't pay it? Exactly, money and income, right? So most of the people who are caught in this DWLS 3 trap are low-income people who don't have the ability to pay. It's not that they want to drive without a license. It's not that there aren't any negative associations like that. It's really a crime of poverty. So, how much money has Washington State spent on this misdemeanor? I'm going to give you some statistics that hopefully will knock your socks off, because when I first heard them, they did for me. So, DWLS 3 became a misdemeanor the legislature voted in 1993 to make it a misdemeanor, and it went into effect in 1994. So between 1994 and 2015, taxpayers in this state spent $1.3 billion on enforcing DWLS 3. A misdemeanor that, again, doesn't keep anybody safe and is really just a crime of poverty. So $1.3 billion represents 1.5 million DWLS 3 charges and 900,000 convictions. And I'm sure a lot of you know about the collateral consequences of having a criminal record, right? So you get a ticket, you can't pay it, you then are caught driving again, you get this misdemeanor, and it affects your housing, it affects your job. So this was the first year that we got a DWLS 3 decriminalization bill introduced, and we made it through 4 policy committees in the Senate, which you're not supposed to have to go through 4 committees in the Senate. But this bill got complicated because we got into some questions about the Department of Licensing and their movement to a new data system. So again, it's our hope that in 2019, at the end of that session, I can come back and say, we have taken DWLS 3 off the books. So we'll see. So who's heard of the WVRA? Yes, thank you. The WVRA is the Washington Voting Rights Act. It is now law as well. It will be effective this June. Yes. So there has been lots of talk about the WVRA, what it does and what it doesn't do. At base, what it does is it addresses the problem of voter dilution. So in local cities and counties, school boards, etc., when you have a community that is less than 50%, but is united but is less than 50% of the people who are in that city or that county, they don't have the ability to affect elections in an at-large system, right? Because in an at-large system, you need 50% or more to win an election. So what the WVRA does is it actually creates a mechanism for cities and counties across the state to move from at-large systems to either district-based elections, or there are various other types of elections. Districts are the ones that people have chosen mostly up until now. So in other states, we know that voting is suppressed in various ways through things like gerrymandering. That's actually not a problem in Washington. What has been a problem is this issue of local elections. So with the VRA, it is our hope that cities and counties will actually escape litigation, and that instead, community members and those local governments can come together through a collaboration period that's built into the bill. And they can work together to find a new voting system that will address that problem of voting dilution and ensure additional representation at whatever the deciding table is, whether that's the county council, the city council, the school board, etc. The last bill that I talked about in November from our priorities is the Protecting Patient Care Act. So this bill, again, didn't make it all the way through. It had a really good hearing in the House and a really good hearing in the Senate, which is all we asked for. So we thought, let's have hearings, let's get the bill introduced, let's start conversations so that we can come back in 2019 with more lawmakers knowing about the bill and see how much movement we can have then. So what is this bill? I think we would all agree that the patient and provider relationship is critical to patients accessing healthcare. However, there are an ever-widening number of hospitals in the state of Washington that are governed by religious doctrine that prohibits access to certain medical information, services, treatments. We believe that those prohibitions hurt patients and that they disproportionately harm women, LGBT members of our community, and people who need end-of-life care. So what this bill would do is simply say that providers, wherever they work across the state, who are willing to provide information, referrals, and services, be allowed to do so without fear of any repercussions from their employer. So, thank you. So I've already been talking for a long time, and I've only gotten through our top line priorities. But I'm hoping there are copies, I think, around the room of our issue areas with some bills from each issue area. Again, as I said, we tracked 840 bills this year, so this, I think, 7-page document is hardly representative of all of that work. But take a look at this because, and it will be on our website as well. Take a look because you'll get more of a glimpse into all the different issue areas we work in. What I did when I put this together is I looked at bills that passed, bills that didn't pass, bills we supported, and bills that we opposed. So you'll get a mix of everything. So I'm just gonna do kind of a quick hit in these areas, but obviously lots to talk about. If there's a specific bill you wanna know about, feel free during the Q&A to come up and ask about that bill. Okay, so criminal law. In this area, we see the same thing pretty much every year. An interest in harsher punishments and raising the seriousness level of various crimes. Many, many times, I am the only person in the room at a hearing arguing against raising the penalties or making the crime more serious. That is not always a very comfortable place to be, but it is absolutely necessary. At the ACLU, our goal is to reduce mass incarceration. And you cannot do that if you continue to put people in prison or jail for longer, and you continue to raise the seriousness level of the crimes for which they've been convicted. Another good bill I want to highlight in the criminal justice area, though, is the Fair Chance Act, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. It essentially says that when someone applies for a job, they can't be asked on their application about their criminal history. And you can't do a background check prior to actually evaluating their application to find out about their criminal history. Employers are able to find out about the criminal history later, but they have to first analyze whether the person could do the job, and then in the interview process can. So basically it's to say you can't just bar people at the beginning of the process because of a criminal record, right? Because again, once someone has served time, they need to become full and respected members of the community again, right? They need to be able to support themselves. So we were really happy to see the Fair Chance Act pass. Drugs and mental health. Good news, bad news. Good news is that there are legislators in the House and the Senate who are really interested in making medication that reverses an opioid overdose more available in schools, available in other places. The bad news is there are also a lot of legislators in both chambers who are interested in involuntary treatment, which research shows is not the most effective. So take a look at the handout for some of those bills. Free speech. Who heard about the legislative records bill? Yeah. It turns out when you make the newspapers angry, they can put a lot on their front page, right? So that bill, which Governor Inslee vetoed, and then we're in the free speech area, would have recognized some legislative records as public records, but not all. And it would have made any enforcement of the law internal to the legislature. So we opposed that bill because we felt like that would actually hinder transparency and government accountability. And that was, again, a bill that passed both chambers, I think, in 36 hours, and the governor ended up vetoing, so it is not law. In the healthcare access area, the Reproductive Parity Act is now law, signed by the governor. That is a bill that reproductive rights and health advocates have worked on for a number of years. It essentially says, if an insurance product in Washington State covers maternity care, it also has to cover abortion care. Whoa. Right. Yeah. Interestingly, all insurance currently sold in Washington does that. Even so, people who are opponents of reproductive rights, there were lots of really passionate speeches in the Senate and in the House on this bill. And it was one of those moments where I thought, right now, the practice of all insurance sold in the state is actually what the bill requires. But we are continuing to focus on whether abortion should be available to women and pregnant people, but not the fact that we're just putting into law what is already practiced. So I'll speak personally, not on camera to anyone else who wants to talk about that vote. Okay, immigrant rights. So in immigrant rights, we saw some really good bills become law. And we also, frankly, heard some floor speeches about some of these bills that are racist, right? You can dress it up and call it something else, but they're racist. And there is a lot of work to do to educate everyone in our community, right, about respect for all the residents of Washington State. But it is incredibly disappointing to hear our elected representatives say things that, frankly, are inappropriate to be said by me right now, by me and my friends later when we go get a drink, but especially by a legislator sitting in the House or the Senate. One good bill I want to mention from that area, which was pushed by some really incredible dreamers, is the Higher Education Opportunities Act, House Bill 1488. That is a bill that will extend state financial aid for higher education to more undocumented Washington State residents. This is a great bill that will make people's lives better. There are dreamers and undocumented students at every state, college, and university in the state of Washington, and this bill will help them stay there. It will help them not work 40 hours a week while also taking a full load as students. So I commend all of the students that worked on this bill, and I'm really excited that it became law. So juvenile justice. For people who are here in the fall, I talked about a bill that we were going to ask to be introduced that would amend the child pornography statute in Washington law. So right now, the state Supreme Court has told us that minors who take intimate images of themselves have created child pornography. I would argue that when the legislature passed the child pornography statute, they passed that in order to criminalize adults who were taking advantage of children, not children who, I think we can agree or disagree that taking an intimate image of yourself and sending it to someone is not the best course of action, but is it child pornography? I would say no, right? And so we introduced a bill that passed the Senate, passed the House Policy Committee, got all the way to the House floor, and unfortunately, we again, 60-day session, ran out of time. So it's our hope that next year we will come back and actually enact this bill, because again, the idea that minors can be both the victims of child pornography and the perpetrators when they take a picture of themselves is ridiculous. So we will see. LGBTQ rights. So has anyone heard about the anti-trans initiative that was filed this year? No, because it wasn't. So we had an anti-trans initiative in 2016 that sought to basically remove protections for trans Washingtonians from the Washington Law Against Discrimination. We saw another initiative in 2017, and we have not seen an initiative this year. So, yeah. We also saw some really great legislation become law. So the state of Washington in the 2018 session banned conversion therapy for minors. And the state of Washington also legalized compensated surrogacy. And that bill creates basically like a protocol for what surrogacy agreements will look like. Prior to, well, and still, until June the 7th, people who wanted to have a child using a surrogate in Washington had to basically find a family member who was willing to do it without any compensation, or pay someone in Oregon or California to do this. So again, this bill will help, everyone who is experiencing reproductive issues and wants to go the surrogacy route to parenthood. It'll help everyone, but it'll especially help LGBT people in our state. So that is exciting. So technology and liberty. As I think we've probably all heard about, this year the FCC reversed a 2015 net neutrality order. That order established rules and prohibited blocking, slowing down websites, and paid prioritization. So the order got reversed, and Washington became the first state in the country to implement a state net neutrality law. So, congratulations. And why is net neutrality important to civil rights and civil liberties? So we think it's important to protect all of our constitutional rights, right? What are some of those rights that net neutrality helps protect? Freedom of speech, association, religion, reproductive freedom, privacy, voting rights. I'm sure we could all come up with more too. Racial justice. So this March 31st was the first Cesar Chavez Day in Washington State. The legislature enacted a law that will make every March 31st Cesar Chavez Day going forward. It was great. And in addition, I want to mention a bill that didn't pass the legislature, but passed the Senate. Senator Hasagawa introduced a bill that would require state employees to produce a racial and ethnic impact statement every time a legislator introduced a bill that would modify adult felony sentencing. So when we talk about the racial disparity in the criminal justice system, and then if you think back to a few minutes ago, maybe more than that, when I said that the legislature is interested in harsher penalties and more seriousness for crimes, right? Senator Hasagawa's bill, if it became law, would mean that every time a legislator tried to do that, there would be a racial and ethnic impact statement that would say, this is how your proposal would affect particular groups in Washington State. So I'm hoping that he'll continue to work on that bill next session. So voting rights. In addition to the WVRA, in 2019, we will see 2 new voting rights protections. The first bill is a pre-registration bill for 16 and 17-year-olds. Studies show that if a 16 or 17-year-old can go and pre-register to vote the first time they engage with a state agency, they are more likely to vote when they turn 18. So that will be law in our state. And additionally, we will have a same-day registration law in effect. Okay, so women's rights. 2 really great bills I want to mention. The first, a bill that prohibits non-disclosure agreements from preventing someone from reporting evidence of a sexual assault or sexual harassment. And then there's another bill that would prohibit defendants from getting more than 2 years of medical records when someone files a harassment claim under the Washington Law Against Discrimination. So I want to tell you a little story about this bill. When I'm setting up testimony in various hearings, right, you have to think about the optics, right? You have to think about who's testifying, what they're going to say, how various people testifying on the same issue can work together to make that presentation full, robust, and look really good to legislators. So on this healthcare information bill, this bill is a Senate bill, and so it passed the Senate and then it went to the House, and it was heard in the House Judiciary Committee. There were 3 people, including me, on the panel supporting the bill. 3 women, 1 attorney who does employment discrimination work, another attorney who does women's rights work, and then me. The panel opposing us was a panel of 3 old white men. And when they testified, one of them quoted, or purported to quote, from one of the sections of the bill. And as soon as he purported to quote from that section, the chair of the committee said, that's not what it says. It actually says exactly the opposite. So you just tried to mine the language to support your argument, but you're wrong. And at that moment I thought, this bill is gonna go. And the same chair, when she closed the hearing, said, I guess we should just call it the Weinstein bill. So again, optics matter. The last bill I want to talk about is a subject that you guys are probably familiar with to some degree. So Initiative 940 is a use of force initiative De-Escalate Washington is the committee that pushed the initiative. I imagine there are people in the room who signed it, who maybe signature gathered for it. 940 was an initiative to the legislature. And under the Washington Constitution, there are 3 things the legislature can do when it receives an initiative that has gotten the required number of signatures. It can adopt it, approve it. The legislature can reject the initiative, or the legislature can amend the initiative. So last December, De-Escalate Washington turned in signatures to the Secretary of State's office. You need about 260,000 valid signatures, and they got 360,000 signatures. So the initiative went to the legislature. And if people are remembering back to the 2017 session, when there were bills about use of force, none of those bills really went anywhere. And so we didn't expect that 940 was going to be voted on by both chambers, and we didn't expect the legislature to take any action. But some of the legislators were interested in facilitating a negotiation between De-Escalate Washington supporters, between the leadership team of De-Escalate, and law enforcement. The ACLU of Washington is part of the De-Escalate leadership team, so I sat in rooms with other leadership team members and representatives of law enforcement from across the state for about 60 hours. And at the beginning, it was kind of rote, right? The legislators asked us to be there, so we were there. We started talking to each other. And I don't know when it happened, but there was a point where we started really listening to each other, and we started sharing, and where law enforcement members had some really good recommendations for how actually to tweak some of the language that the initiative contained to make it better and stronger and actually effectuate what we wanted more directly. So at the end of that negotiation, we came up with House Bill 3003. So the idea was that both chambers would pass 940, and they would also sign 3003, which was the result of all of that negotiation. And that's what happened. The picture that you see here is with Governor Inslee. For those of you who don't recognize him, he's right in the middle. After he signed House Bill 3003. So all of that voting happened really, really quickly. It happened on the second and last day of session. So the story in the newspapers was a little bit like, oh my God, these bills passed the legislature so quickly, what could have happened? And to each I wanted to say, 60 hours in the room, so many more hours outside of the room. But as you may have tracked, Tim Eyman filed a lawsuit arguing that the process was unconstitutional. And so he filed that case in Thurston County, and last Friday, a Thurston County judge actually found for him that yes, it was unconstitutional. And her remedy was that I-940 would be on the ballot in November. Now, the state immediately appealed. So this is going to go up probably to the state Supreme Court. We don't know what will happen. We don't know what will be on the ballot. But I tell you this story to say, stay tuned, but also to say that, the ACLU is a nonpartisan organization. We want to work with everybody who wants to work with us. And I will sit in a room for 60 hours. My colleagues will sit in rooms for hours and hours. And in a time where we don't talk to each other, being forced to sit and look someone in the eye and talk to them resulted in a policy that even people who think the process was unconstitutional actually support. So, don't know what will happen. I don't know how 3003 will become law, but there is absolutely support from De-Escalate, from leadership team members and their individual organizations, and from law enforcement to make sure that all of us are protected both by 940, but also by 3003. So we will see what happens and how that's accomplished. Thank you. Okay, so that was all backward looking. The rest, the quick rest, is forward looking. So 2018 elections in November. What seats are up? Here is a list of them. And there are 14 legislators who have announced that they will not be seeking re-election. 12 from the House, 2 from the Senate. So is anyone in the 41st? Well, Mercer Island is in the 41st. Judy Cliburn is retiring. She's the representative. How about anyone in the 34th? Yeah, so your senator, who is the majority leader, is also retiring, Sharon Nelson. What about the 32nd? So Ruth Kagi, who's one of the representatives in the 32nd, is also retiring. So here are some key dates that'll be important for all of us to know. Next month, all the candidates will have to file by May 18th. The primary will be on August 7th, and the election day is the 6th, November 6th. So you'll see here too, I have noted when you have to register online to vote, if you are not registered to vote in those elections. Now, look, so prior to, as I said, the same-day registration bill becoming law next year, if you want to vote in the primary and you are not yet registered, you have to register by July the 9th. And for the general election, you have to register by October the 8th in order to vote in the November 6th election. So, if you're not registered, register. If you have friends who aren't registered, tell them to get registered. The last kind of substantive thing I want to talk about is voting rights restoration. So there are lots of states where once you have a criminal conviction or a felony conviction, you can no longer vote. So in the state of Florida, felons do not have the right to vote. There is currently an initiative in Florida that would restore their right to vote, but that is law now. So what about in Washington? So if you are convicted of a felony, you lose the right to vote while you're incarcerated. So while you're in the Department of Corrections custody, whether that's actually at a prison or community supervision, you are not allowed to vote. But as soon as you're no longer under DOC supervision, you may vote again. Your right to vote is automatically restored, but you do have to re-register. So there is a step, but the right is there. How about misdemeanors? Do they impact your right to vote? Yes, that's correct. They don't. So if you've only been convicted of a misdemeanor, you're absolutely eligible to vote. What about felony convictions in juvenile court? Correct. That does not affect your right to vote. So again, restoration is automatic. If you were convicted in a Washington State adult court of a felony, as soon as you're out from under DOC supervision, you just need to re-register. If you were convicted in another state of a felony, as soon as you're released and you move to Washington, you also have the right to vote. So we have, I think throughout the room, I think there are other pieces that talk about voting rights restoration. If you don't have one of those handouts, they are also available on our website. So if you need that or you need that information for someone else, please go and look for it. Okay, so again, what can you do? You can vote. So really, take advantage of this election season, right? Whatever your issues are, whether they're one that I mentioned or several I mentioned or something totally different, go to listen to your legislator. They're seeking re-election. Go to listen to their candidates, the other candidates who are running against them, and ask how they feel about, whatever policy or issue is the one you care most about. And listen to what they say. And if they give you an answer that's a little bit wishy-washy, push them. Ask a follow-up question. Because again, the more that legislators hear their constituents talk about what is important or interesting to them, the more they will focus on that issue. And the way that stuff moves in Olympia is when you have enough legislators say to their leadership in whatever caucus and whatever chamber, I really care about this issue. My constituents really care about that issue. When you have enough legislators saying that, you have enough constituents saying that to their representatives, you have enough legislators saying that to their leadership, that's when bills start to move. So the power is absolutely in your hands, and you have tons of access in the next couple of months as people are running to be reelected or to be elected for the first time. So that is it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Elisabeth Smith is awesome, right? We're so fortunate to have her being the face and voice of ACLU and of all of you before our legislature in Olympia. It is such hard work. I've accompanied her on at least one occasion, and it is such hard work. So we're really grateful. So thank you, Elizabeth. So the other thing I want to do really quickly before I take some questions is just ACLU staff who are in the room, could you just wave? Yeah, could you guys clap for them, please? They work really hard every day, and then they're here tonight too because it's fun, but they're also working really hard tonight. So anyway, they're waving like crazy back there, and they're dancing. They're very close to the beer. I'm not sure. Okay, so gonna do the thing that I usually do for those of you who have been here before. For those who are new, we definitely welcome your questions. What I'm gonna do is just ask you to line up at the